Peace be with you. Dear friends, we are celebrating 32nd Sunday in Ordinary Time. Today we have marvelous readings for our reflection. First reading comes from First Kings chapter 17. We have details about the widow of Zarephath and her encounter with Prophet Elijah. Now, in the gospel passage, we have some important aspects that are highlighted by Jesus in the first part of the gospel, Mark chapter 12, verses 38 to 44. Here, Jesus criticizes the scribes. They were full of themselves. What they wanted? Attention from people. They wanted to be honored in marketplaces. They would go with long ropes to be greeted and to occupy first seats in the synagogue and banquets. And also, Jesus very painfully says that these were devouring the widows, practically whatever income they had, saying long prayers. That means such a lot of things that Jesus wants to highlight in this gospel passage, in some way helpful for us, that pretensions and putting on things in our daily life does not add up to our spirituality. Hypocritical approach to spiritual life does not in any way add up to our merits before God. What is important is a sincerity of heart, simplicity, humility, and openness to the Holy Spirit. That is what is required in our daily life. We should never ever have the mind of the scribes indicated by Jesus in today's gospel passage. Now, passing on to the second part of the gospel, very interesting episode. Jesus perhaps was a little bit of tired because of his discussions with the Sadducees, scribes, and Pharisees in the temple. This particular gospel situates practically in the Holy Week. And we find Jesus resting a while and observing keenly all those people who were dropping coins in the temple treasury. Just to give the location of this place, where practically at the center of the temple, in the court of the women, there were trumpet-shaped collection boxes. And when people were dropping money into these collection boxes, when those coins were running through the shaft of the collection boxes, it would create a big noise. Rich people contributed huge amounts of money to the temple because it was a massive structure which required maintenance. And therefore, people were generous enough to contribute their share, because the temple was a place of pride for the Jewish people. And there were also tourists who were coming to see this massive structure. And it is said that this was a huge, massive structure during the time of Jesus, one of the biggest buildings around that area. And people would come to see the beauty of this temple, which was practically being built over 80 years. And during the time of great King Herod, the money was spent for the completion of this building. And here, people were contributing generously. Now, I would like to make a reference. Jesus does not criticize the rich people here who are putting money into the temple treasury. Why? Because it was a needed thing on the part of the rich people to contribute money to the temple for the maintenance of the temple premises. And it was a necessary thing. And Jesus does not in any way make a negative remark about the rich people. Now, today we need to appreciate the rich people who are contributing their share to the churches, to the maintenance of the structures in the Catholic Church. We need to appreciate their sacrifice, because they could use that money for any other purpose. But rich people, good-hearted people, are really generous enough to contribute. Even if they have contributed out of their abundance, that is good for the church, because only with the money of the poor we wouldn't be able to maintain the structures we have today. So one word of appreciation, certainly, to the rich people who can contribute, who can give money to maintain our structures. That's a very important thing. I think we should never always criticize the rich people, because they have that generosity and they really think about the church, and therefore they contribute. They could have used that money for any other purpose, and especially in this modern world, there are multiple ways of spending money. But there are good hearted, generous, rich people contributing money for the maintenance of the church. We need to appreciate them. And Jesus does not make a very negative remark about them. But here comes this poor widow, and she does not have anything. She has just two copper coins, and she drops them into the temple treasury. Just imagine, dear friends, here something extraordinary happens. The attitude with which we contribute our share to God is the same measure how God reciprocates. Now, you see here, when this woman silently dropping those two coins, copper coins, which are called pennies, and actually it is 1/64th of day's wage. That means insignificant in its value, but Jesus appreciates her. God himself sees her sacrifice. God watches our hearts. What we do with our heart is more important for God than any other external manifestation. In the first part of the gospel too, this is a very important thing for our meditation today. The scribes who were making a show of their religiosity to get applause and appreciation from people, Jesus does not appreciate them. But this woman, who is so insignificant in the whole crowd of people, coming and dropping these two copper coins into the temple treasury, has more value than all other people who are contributing out of their abundance. And she has contributed everything she had to live on. So this is a very clear and important aspect for our consideration. In our daily life, dear friends, we should be able to live according to the movement of our heart. Whatever we want to do, whatever we want to do. Now, for example, there are multiple people around us. We help them. But with what intention do we help them? For example, we have many places in big cities where we stop at the red light, traffic red light, and there people come asking for help. Now, what is our attitude towards them? Certainly, those are very disadvantaged people, homeless people, very poor people. Now, if you want to give them something, do it with a willing and generous heart, without having any kind of judgments in your mind. Do it as it were God himself approaches you for help. That has a tremendous impact on our generosity. Not to impress people, not to show to other people, rather just give whatever you can to help that person who is suffering, who is very, very poor, disadvantaged in the society. So if we can have that attitude, certainly our generosity has a tremendous merit before God. Now, in the New Testament, we find God's compassion towards the widows, especially. Widows were very helpless during the time of Jesus. They were practically beggars. If their sons and daughters would not help them, if they did not have any family members to help them, they would be simply on the roadside begging. And we find some important episodes in the gospel, especially in Luke's gospel, chapter 7, verses 11 to 17. In Luke's gospel, we find there Jesus' compassion towards that widow of Nain, who Jesus raises her dead son. Jesus had tremendous compassion on that woman because she was really suffering. The only breadwinner of that family had died, and Jesus raises him to life. And then we have that wonderful episode of the widow who goes to the judge seeking for justice, that we find in Luke's Gospel, chapter 18, verse 1 to 8. This woman never giving up. And Jesus picks up this parable to teach us how we need to be persistent in our prayer, where the judge finally decides to give her justice. And this episode of the widow who drops 2 coins into the temple treasury is a tremendous inspiration to all of us. In our daily life, dear friends, what is important is the intention that we have towards others, towards our work, towards the world, towards people, towards our neighbors, towards our family members. What kind of intention do you have? Do you want to take advantage of people by your generosity? Or you want to be just generous for being generous in the name of God? That woman dropping 2 simple copper coins in the temple treasury showed her total dependence on God. She knew that somehow God will provide her. And God sees her heart in the person of Jesus. And she was very much appreciated of her generosity. In our daily life, we have multiple opportunities. And to take the example of little Therese, as we are geared to celebrate the centenary of her canonization next year, what was she doing? She was silently, secretly, humbly doing the daily chores of the convent, hidden, without disclosing them to others. She was secretly there to do things out of love for Christ. If we have that attitude, we can change the world. We can change our surroundings. We can change our family, our society, even our parish. Our contribution with a generous heart, with a humble heart, is more important before God than contributing huge amounts or whatever that may be our work to impress others. Our humble approach with a generous heart is what counts before God. And God, who sees us in secret, will reward us. God bless you.